This video was published by MBKP International, LLC. This video I'm going to show you some more advanced techniques as to squaring the paper guide area. If your paper, this is basically for if, for example, if you have a stack of paper here like this, and you cut it. Say you have it in here and you take it out and you cut it like 6 inches. And you cut it, and then you bring it out and you measure it, and one side's 6 and one side's like 5 and 3/4 or 5 3/4 or 6 1/4. So it's not cutting at the right angle. If the angle's off on something. So these are the techniques you're going to use to fix that. First thing you want to do is you want to remove this. You want to have it unplugged, power off and unplugged. And then you want to remove these 2 top back screws here. There's one, and here's the other one. I've already removed it to make this quicker. And once you do that, you can slide this to the side on both of them, and then you can pull this straight out, this plexiglass piece, all the way out, and then just set it to the side. Next thing you want to do is remove this top cover. You got 2 screws here and 2 screws on the other side. Just remove those screws. Be careful. Make sure you use the right size screwdriver, so you don't strip out the screws or anything. Just and you have to remove this plexiglass before you remove this, because this lip here. So remove the plexiglass and remove those, and then just pull straight up. Just pull straight up on it, and it should come right off real easy. Okay. Okay. Next thing you're going to want to do is you probably should have this back a little further, but it's good right here for now. But we have some other videos to show some basic squaring, and basically the blade's down on this right now, so I won't even do it. I don't need to, but you'd raise the blade up and slide this through, and then put it up against this. If it's back further, you get more of an edge to put this square up against. So put it back further if you want a nice size square like this, at least 16 inches here, and then a nice long one that way. It's not going to get much more than 16, as you can see. It'd be too big for it. So this is the perfect square for it here, a 16-inch one way, and then this goes up to like 24 the other way. I think this is a standard size square. But then you'd square it against this side, and then you would square this against that, and you'd use these adjustments here to do that. We have another video if you need that to show you how to do that. But once you square it, tighten it and get everything tightened down, recheck it, make sure it's still squared. Then you put your paper in. You got to make sure you have your paper squared, and you push it forward to whatever you need to, and you cut it. And then you can check it, and if it's like, say you set it to 6 inches, and if it's 6 inches on both sides, you're good. But if it's still off squared, like it's 6 inches on one side and 5 7/8 on the other, then there's something else wrong with it, something else out of square on it. And I'll show you the other things it can be. First, let's come over here. You want to see, this is your blade here. You can see it down here. The blade there is touching now. This upper big piece here with these screws in it, this is your blade holder basically. Nice and long, goes all the way through. And it comes out to this other side here. And as you can see, you just got to make sure it's got a real nice snug fit. You know, it should just be paper thin to where you can fit between this and this blade holder. And the same on this bar here. It should be a very snug fit. If you see a nice space, if you can stick a screwdriver in there, you know, a space like that big, then this blade is loose, and you need to adjust it. And not the blade actually, but this here. And to do that, and I'll do it on this side over here. You can see it probably a little better. Let's say this thing was and this would also work if your blade was binding. This could be too tight too, and you try to blade and your blade sticks halfway down and it starts binding. It's because it's pinching the blade. So what you want to do is you got these 2 top screws here. You can loosen this, and you can see this is kind of an oval cut out here. It allows for this to move back and forth a little bit, which allows this to move out or in, which will either clamp down the blade more or loosen up. If it was too loose and there's a space between it and the blade like that much, the blade can move a little bit like that, and causing your cut to be off. So you want to make sure, as you can see, like this one's pretty good right now. Let me get the screwdriver so I can show you. If you can get in here and look at this in the camera right here. Let me see. Let me hold 1 second. Let me get a flashlight. Sorry about that, but I know you're not going to be able to see that without a flashlight. But you can see this is the other side of the blade holder. And right now it's got a pretty snug, it's pretty snug on it. See, it's right up against it on that side, and it's right up against this on that side. You know, again, if you get it too snug, it will pinch it, and it won't move, so you have to back it up a hair. But I loosened up that side, and as you can see right here, you can see this part move back when I tap it. And you see it moved back a little bit. I gave this a little more space here. Now that might cause it to be off and cause it to shift a little bit. So it actually needs to go back. And you see it went back and it's kind of flush with that now. And I'll tighten it down. But basically what I'm trying to tell you here is this piece here and this piece here needs to be fairly not tight on it, but it needs to, there can't be no play here. And a lot of times you can grab this blade here in a safe area and see if and try to shift it, see if it shifts back and forth at all. And do it when it's halfway up if you can with this up here like this, because it's down now touching the pad, it wouldn't move anyway. But do it about halfway up and then you can see if there's any play in it at all. And see if there's any spaces between here and there. And that's your adjustment, that top screw, and that you can do that to the other side and it would move slightly that way. But I would actually do this, this would be the last one I'd do. Let me tighten this back down where it needs to be. The one I would do next, if you squared it here and here and it's still off square, the next step I would do is check to make sure this is correct. And one way to do that is just to measure it here. We're up against that and to the edge of that. Now this one here on mine is just a hair under 8 7/8 inch. So I want to make sure it's a hair under 8 7/8 over here. And it is. Yours may be a slightly different measurement, so you don't necessarily go by that. It should be close though. But if it wasn't, like if I measured here and it was 8 7, a hair under 7/8, and this was an 8 and a hair over 7/8, obviously I'd need to either tap this one back or tap this side forward. And the way to do that would be you got 2 back screws here. You want to remove those. Another thing, actually, before you move these screws, you can loosen them, and then to loosen the top one here, there's one that goes right down through there, and I've already taken it out. You see the hole for it right there, possibly, but I've already removed that one. But you also want to make sure this is flush up against this all the way down, because if it wasn't, it could look like, you know, that where it's flush there, and you got a space there. Because as you can see, this is an oval hole here, and there's a little room for adjustment there. So you got to make sure it's pushed all the way against it, all the way against it, all the way down. And if that's the case, and these are still off, then once you get that screw there and these 2 back ones out, you can pull this out sideways like this, just straight out sideways, and then flip it over. And you got 2 screws here. You may want to mark the outside with a Sharpie, a nice fine point Sharpie, like right there and right down there before you loosen any of this. That way you know where it was before and you can easily put it back. And then you can loosen this screw here, depending on that screw, depending on which side you want to move. If you want to move this a little bit that way or that way, to make sure this is an even measurement on both of them. And when it is even, then you can snug them back down. And then just put this back. Slides in nice and easy. And again, you want to make sure it's flush all the way down here. So hit on the back, make sure it's flush all the way down, and then you tighten that screw up there. It's gonna actually have to back it up just a little bit there, right there. And then you'll have these 2 back screws to put in. Now, and then once you do that, you're probably gonna, once everything's tightened up and everything, then you're probably gonna have to re-square this, because this is gonna be off now. So then you go back with your square and put it in here and flush it up against this. It's at a new angle now, so it's gonna change this to where you're gonna have to readjust this by loosening those 2 screws about 2 or 3 turns, and loosening these a couple turns, then putting your level and your square in there, and squaring this against this side of the square all the way down. And then slowly do about a half a turn, then a half a turn, a half a turn, a half a turn, until it slightly snugs down on both sides, and then you tighten these 2 down. And then when you're done, recheck your square, make sure it didn't move. And that's basically it. The only other thing I could think that could possibly be wrong is you could possibly measure this here, and it could be 8 7/8 precisely there, and 8 7/8 precisely there. And this blade here, it could look good, like it's no play in it, and it's perfect there, so the blade's not moving. And you think, well, what's out of whack then? Well, then it would have to be this. Regardless of what this measurement says, if you're cutting and 6 inches on one side and like 5 7/8 on the other side, then and you square this perfectly, and the blade is not wobbly, then it just must be this. So depending on which way your thing is off, even if these measurements are correct, you need to take this off and loosen one of those sides up and tap and tap it either this way to move this out, or tap it this way to move this out. You know, depending on which way it's off, depending on which way your cut's off. So basically, if it's off, you have the power to adjust it correctly. It's going to be in, if your blade's not wobbly, if it is, then you could adjust it through this. But if it's not wobbly and this is square, then this must be off. So you're going to have to loosen those in there and move it one way or the other and retighten it, and then I would just back this up before you re-square this, and then just square the paper just on this one side and just do a test cut. Just make sure it's perfectly square just up against this edge, and then cut and then measure, and then that way you can keep doing little adjustments until you get it perfectly to where you know this is perfectly squared with how the blade's coming down. And then once you know that, then you can square this with using the square. Do your final squaring of the back paper support with that. And that's basically it. I hope I was clear on exactly what you need to do on this, but of course after you're done you need to put your screws back in there, but I'd put your screws back in before you do any tests on this, because you know those screws could shift something slightly. So make sure the screws are in, just move that all the way back, and then just flush your paper against this, perfectly against that side. Move it forward an inch or so and just cut off an inch, and then measure it and see if it's cutting at a straight angle. If it's not, adjust it however it needs, back that way a little bit, or maybe forward this way a little bit, however you need to adjust it. There is plenty of play. When you loosen those screws, this has plenty of play in it. It will move back and forth any which way you want it. So just depending on which way you need it to move, you just got to figure that out and keep playing with the adjustments and recutting, remeasuring the cut. And if it needs to tap a little bit more this way, then you do that. But make sure these screws are in and tight, because before you check a cut, because if they're not, then you could put those screws in and it could make this off. But once you get it squared on this, then you know it's right. Then you just need to square this back paper support with this, like we've shown in other videos how to do. But I think that's it. Hopefully this will be helpful for you.